My parents made me raise all my siblings. From age 6, while they collected government money for fake childcare, so when I tried to escape for college, they called CPS on me, but their own lies became the trap that destroyed them. In my family, the eldest daughter was expected to raise every child born after her, not help with, not babysit, but become their actual mother from the moment they arrived home from the hospital. I changed my first diaper when I was 6 years old. You see, my mother was a former teen mom who treated pregnancy like catching a cold, something that just happened to you. My father worked construction, but somehow his paychecks always disappeared into new tools or nights at the bar. They both came from huge families where this was just how things worked. By the time I was 8, I had 3 siblings under my care. My parents would leave for their date nights while I heated bottles and rocked crying babies. Soon you'll get married and pass the burden on to someone else, my mother would say each time she announced another pregnancy, her eyes landing on me like I was hired help. Fast forward 8 years later, when I turned 14, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table with this formal announcement. She was pregnant again. Nothing new. Except this time, she handed me a notebook labeled Household Schedule, with my name listed as primary caregiver from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. You're old enough to handle night feedings alone now, she said. My father nodded from his recliner. We canceled your after-school activities. Family comes first. The worst part was when they told me I'd need to get a work permit to buy diapers because they couldn't afford extras. They called it giving me real-world experience. This is what love looks like in our culture, they said. You're so much better with them than we are. My days started at 5:30 a.m., making breakfast for 4 kids while my parents slept in. I fell asleep during a parent-teacher conference once, and my parents told everyone I must be partying. The youngest started calling me mama at the grocery store, and people would give us looks. Then came the breaking point. I'd worked so hard to get a full academic scholarship to my dream college. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. For once, I wasn't an underage mother. I was just Lisa, a normal girl, going to a normal college. I was in the middle of happy tears when my mother walked in. I'm pregnant, she yelled. My face dropped. It was twins. That was the same week that my dad decided to be even more neglectful than usual. I had to be the one to hold my mom's hair when she vomited, to massage her feet, to fix her pregnancy cravings, all while taking care of the kids. The counselor called the next week saying I needed to submit final paperwork by 3 p.m. The baby got sick and wouldn't stop screaming. I missed the deadline by 10 minutes. The scholarship was withdrawn for lack of commitment. My parents said college would have been selfish anyway. I started planning my escape in secret, applied to community college and got accepted, got a part-time job at a grocery store and hid my money in a tampon box. My 16-year-old sister Sarah found out but promised to keep quiet. For once, everything was going according to plan. Until my parents found the acceptance letter I'd hidden in my chemistry textbook. My mother cried about all their sacrifices. My father threatened to kick me out if I abandoned the family. I didn't say a word. And the next day, I came home from work to find the house riddled with social workers. Apparently, my parents told them I was the neglectful caregiver who was supposed to be watching everyone. The social worker saw through it, but gave me an impossible choice. Either I stayed as the primary caregiver or my siblings would go into foster care. My parents stood there smirking like they'd won, but I had an ace up my sleeve. Sarah had been recording them on her phone for weeks. The social worker, Ms. Johnson, pulled out her clipboard and started asking questions while my parents stood there with their arms crossed. Sarah slipped her phone into my hand behind her back. I felt the weight of it like a lifeline. These recordings, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. They show everything. My mother's face went white. My father stepped forward, grabbing for the phone, but Ms. Johnson held up her hand. Let's all stay calm. Lisa, can you show me what you have? I played the first recording. My mother's voice filled the room, clear as day. Lisa needs to understand her place. She's the oldest girl. This is her job until she gets married and has her own eldest daughter to take over. My father's voice followed. If she thinks she's going to college instead of raising these kids, she's got another thing coming. We'll make sure of that. The room went silent. My parents exchanged panicked looks. Then my mother did what she always did when cornered. She started crying. That's taken out of context, she wailed. Lisa must have edited it with one of those apps. Kids these days can fake anything with technology. My father jumped on that immediately. She's been unstable lately, talking about abandoning the family. She probably made this up to get attention. Ms. Johnson looked between us, her expression unreadable. These are serious allegations. We'll need to verify the authenticity of these recordings. Call Derek, my mother said suddenly. My nephew Derek works in IT. He can prove these are fake. Within an hour, cousin Derek arrived with his laptop. He was 25 and had always been the family's go-to for computer problems. He listened to the recordings, typed on his computer, then looked up at Ms. Johnson. Audio manipulation is incredibly easy these days, he said. There are dozens of apps that can splice conversations together. Without the original files and metadata, there's no way to prove these are real. Sarah's face fell. I felt my heart sink. Of course the family would protect each other. That's what they always did. Ms. Johnson made notes on her clipboard. I'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, the children will remain in the home under the current arrangement. After she left, my parents' masks dropped completely. My mother grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. You think you're so smart? We're calling a family meeting. Let's see what Grandma Helen thinks about you trying to destroy this family. The next morning, our house filled with relatives. Grandma Helen sat in the living room like a queen holding court. She was my mother's mother, the matriarch who had raised 12 children and believed suffering built character. I hear you've been making trouble, she said when she saw me, recording your parents like some kind of spy. In my day, children who disrespected their elders got the belt. My aunts nodded in agreement. Uncle Tony, the lawyer, sat beside her taking notes. My mother had already called him about representing them if things escalated. Lisa's always been difficult, my mother said, dabbing at her eyes. We've tried everything. We even found a counselor friend who's been documenting her behavior issues. She produced a folder full of papers papers. I recognized the letterhead from Mrs. Patterson's counseling practice. She and my mother had gone to high school together. The papers claimed I showed signs of severe attachment disorder, oppositional defiance, and pathological lying. These are fake, I protested, but Grandma Helen silenced me with a look. Children who won't fulfill their family duties are sick in the head, she declared. Your mother did her duty. I did mine. Every woman in this family has done theirs. You think you're special? The family split into camps over the next few days. A few cousins privately told me they understood, but none would speak up publicly. Most sided with my parents. Family tradition was sacred. Breaking it meant betraying everything they stood for. My parents filed paperwork with the court claiming I was mentally unstable and had been turning the younger children against them. They wanted emergency custody formally transferred to them with me barred from any caretaking roles. The irony wasn't lost on me. You're going to regret this, my father said that night. We've given you everything. A roof over your head, food, a purpose, and this is how you repay us? The locks were changed the next morning. I came home from my shift at the grocery store to find my key didn't work. My clothes were in garbage bags on the lawn. The restraining order was taped to the front door. They'd claimed I'd threatened them during the family meeting. Sarah watched from her bedroom window, tears streaming down her face. She held up her phone, mouthing, I'm recording. But what good would that do when the whole family was against us? I slept in my car that night, parked behind the grocery store. My manager found me the next morning when he came to open up. I begged him not to say anything. I needed this job more than ever now, but word traveled fast in our small town. By the end of the week, 3 of my father's construction crew buddies had come by the store. They didn't say anything directly, just stood in my checkout line, buying single items, making comments about ungrateful children who didn't appreciate their parents' sacrifices. My manager called me into his office the next day. I'm sorry, Lisa, but we've been getting complaints. Customers say you seem distracted, that you're making mistakes. With everything going on, maybe it's best if you take some time off. Please, I begged. I need this job. I don't have anywhere else to go. He looked uncomfortable. It's just temporary, until things settle down with your family situation. But we both knew it wasn't temporary. In a small town where my father's crew did half the construction work, crossing him meant consequences. I spent the next 2 nights in my car before the women's shelter finally had a bed. The intake worker looked at my restraining order and frowned. Your parents filed this? Against their own daughter? I nodded, too exhausted to explain. The shelter was loud and crowded, but it was better than my car. I had a bed, a locker for my things, and access to a shower. I could figure out the rest later. The family court hearing was set for the following week. My parents had Uncle Tony representing them pro bono. I had no one. Legal aid said I didn't qualify since technically I wasn't the one seeking custody. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best clothes, wrinkled from being stored in my car. Sarah texted me, they've been coaching the kids all week. I'm sorry. I walked into the courtroom to find my parents looking like model citizens. My mother wore a conservative dress. My father a suit I'd never seen before. They'd brought character witnesses from their jobs. My mother's supervisor from the dental office where she worked part-time. My father's foreman. Even Mrs. Patterson was there with her fake therapy notes. Your Honor, Uncle Tony began, my clients are hardworking parents doing their best with a troubled teenager. Lisa has always had difficulty accepting authority. These recordings she claims to have are clearly fabricated, as our IT expert will testify. Derek took the stand and repeated his claims about audio manipulation. He showed the judge examples of apps that could create fake conversations. He was smooth, professional, believable. Then my parents testified. They painted a picture of a rebellious daughter who resented having younger siblings, who made up stories for attention, who had threatened to destroy the family if she didn't get her way. We love all our children equally, my mother said, tears rolling down her cheeks. But Lisa has always been different, difficult. We've tried so hard to help her. When it was my turn to speak, I felt like I was drowning. Every word I said sounded weak compared to their prepared statements. I tried to explain about the years of caretaking, the missed opportunities, the parentification, but without proof, it was my word against theirs. Where are these recordings now? The judge asked. My sister has them, I said. Sarah, she's been documenting everything. Your 16-year-old sister? The judge looked skeptical. The one your parents claim you've been manipulating? Sarah was called to testify. She walked in looking smaller than usual, her hands shaking. Our parents stared at her from their table. Uncle Tony smiled at her like a shark. Sarah, he began gently, has your sister Lisa been asking you to record your parents? Sarah glanced at me, then at our parents. She didn't ask me to. I did it on my own. But she knew about it? She encouraged it? Sarah's voice cracked. I just wanted to help. Of course you did. You love your sister. But sometimes people we love can lead us astray. Has Lisa been telling you stories about your parents? Making you see things differently? I watched Sarah crumble under the questioning. Our parents had gotten to her, threatened her, made her doubt herself. By the time Uncle Tony was done, it looked like I'd masterminded some elaborate scheme to turn my siblings against their loving parents. The judge looked troubled but seemed to be buying it. I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, was being twisted into evidence against me. That's when Ms. Johnson stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to present some additional findings from my investigation. She pulled out a thick manila folder and approached the bench. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Uncle Tony's confident smile faltered slightly. During my investigation, I discovered some concerning financial discrepancies, Ms. Johnson said, her voice calm but firm. Mrs. Martinez has been collecting government assistance for childcare services for the past 8 years. My mother's face went pale. My father gripped the edge of the table. The applications state that she requires childcare assistance due to her work schedule at the dental office. However, my investigation revealed that Lisa has been the primary caregiver during all the hours covered by this assistance. Uncle Tony jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is clearly a misunderstanding. My client may have made some clerical errors that total over $20,000 in fraudulent claims, Ms. Johnson Johnson interrupted. She produced photocopies of the applications, each one signed by Mrs. Martinez, claiming she was paying for professional childcare services. The judge leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Ms. Johnson, are you suggesting welfare fraud? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Your Honor. Furthermore, Mr. Martinez has been claiming Lisa as a dependent on his taxes, while simultaneously requiring her to work to support the household. He's been collecting child tax credits for a child who was functioning as an unpaid nanny and contributing financially to the family. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. This is ridiculous. We've supported Lisa her entire life. Sit down, Mr. Martinez, the judge ordered sharply. Ms. Johnson, do you have documentation to support these claims? Ms. Johnson nodded and handed over more papers. Bank records showing deposits from government assistance programs, tax returns showing dependent claims, and most tellingly, security footage from the benefits office showing Mrs. Martinez signing these applications herself. My mother started sobbing loudly, not the calculated tears from earlier, but genuine panic. We were just trying to make ends meet. Construction work is seasonal. We needed help. Then why force your daughter to provide free childcare while collecting money meant to pay for that exact service? The judge asked. Uncle Tony tried to salvage the situation. Your Honor, even if there were some financial irregularities, that doesn't negate the fact that Lisa has been exhibiting concerning behavior. The recordings are still suspicious and, actually, Ms. Johnson interrupted again, I had those recordings analyzed by an independent audio forensics expert, not someone related to the family. She glanced pointedly at Derek, who suddenly found the floor very interesting. They're authentic. No signs of manipulation or editing. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Tony, were you aware that your expert witness was a family member when you presented him as an objective professional? Uncle Tony's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He has legitimate IT credentials. That's not what I asked. Were you aware he was related to your clients? Yes, Your Honor. And you didn't think that was relevant information to disclose? The courtroom fell silent. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah had started crying quietly in her seat in the gallery. The judge turned back to Ms. Johnson. What else did your investigation uncover? A pattern of parentification dating back to when Lisa was 6 years old. Multiple witnesses from the children's schools have confirmed that Lisa was often the one attending parent-teacher conferences, signing permission slips with her parents' consent, and handling medical appointments for the younger children. She pulled out more documents. I also discovered that Lisa's college scholarship was withdrawn due to missed deadlines that occurred while she was caring for a sick infant. The same infant her parents claimed they were paying professional childcare to watch. The judge reviewed the papers, his frown deepening with each page. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to ask you directly. Have you been collecting government assistance for childcare while forcing your eldest daughter to provide that care for free? My mother looked at my father. My father looked at Uncle Tony. Uncle Tony looked defeated. Your Honor, my mother finally said, her voice small. We were just doing what our parents did. This is how families work. The oldest daughter helps with the babies. It's tradition. Tradition doesn't override the law, Mrs. Martinez, nor does it excuse welfare fraud. The judge turned to me. Lisa, do you have anything you'd like to add? I stood on shaky legs. I just wanted to go to college. I worked so hard for that scholarship. I love my siblings, but I wanted a chance at my own life. When I tried to leave, they called social services and claimed I was neglectful. They changed the locks. They got a restraining order based on lies. I've been sleeping in my car and then at a shelter because my own parents made me homeless for wanting an education. She's being dramatic, my father started, but the judge cut him off with a sharp gesture. Mr. Martinez, I've heard enough. Ms. Johnson, what are your recommendations? Given the evidence of financial fraud and the systematic parentification of Lisa, I recommend a full investigation by the Department of Social Services. I also recommend that the restraining order against Lisa be immediately vacated as it appears to have been obtained under false pretenses. The judge nodded. I'm inclined to agree. I'm also ordering a forensic accounting review of the Martinez family finances. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, you should be aware that welfare fraud is a criminal offense that can result in prosecution. My parents went white. Uncle Tony started gathering his papers, clearly wanting to distance himself from the situation. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering temporary custody of the minor children to remain with the parents under strict supervision from social services. Lisa, you are not to be required to provide any childcare. Any violation of this order will result in immediate removal of the children. But who will watch them? My mother cried. We can't afford. Perhaps you should have thought of that before committing fraud with the money meant to pay for childcare, the judge said coldly. Court is adjourned. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, do not leave the state. You'll be notified of the criminal investigation proceedings. The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. My parents sat frozen, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. They'd tried to trap me, but had trapped themselves instead. Outside the courthouse, Ms. Johnson pulled me aside. Lisa, I know this is overwhelming, but you should know that the forensic accountant will likely find more than just the childcare fraud. If your father has been claiming you as a dependent while you were working, that's tax fraud too. I nodded numbly. What happens now? Now you focus on rebuilding your life. The restraining order will be vacated within 24 hours. You can return home to get your belongings. I'll arrange for a police escort if you'd prefer. I don't want to go back there, I said quickly. Not to live. I just want my things. That's understandable. Do you have somewhere to stay? The shelter has space for another week. After that, I shrugged. Without my job, I had no idea what I'd do. Ms. Johnson handed me a business card. This is a transitional housing program for young adults escaping family abuse. Tell them I sent you. They can help with housing and job placement. I took the card with trembling hands.